let me tell you a little bit about this horse. And when Tammy was showing me the picture and said, "Do you recognize this horse?" And I see so many horses in the program. I'll never forget this horse. There's some that you just never forget. And so I'll tell my little part of it. You guys, both of you, go ahead and come on up here. Hey. Said, this isn't dirt. This isn't dirt. So, hey. So when I first met this horse, it was in the wild horse program, and kind of the boss of the group, and we had probably about 700 horses in the program, and we had some people burning brush nearby. They were burning brush in a ditch canal, and the wind caught and it hit the embers, hit the manure in the wild horse area. And when you have that many horses, you got just a lot of even though you're maintaining it, it's just a layer. And so once it hit that and started burning, it just went from one pen to the other. So I'm out there, we got it, just smoke just billowing up, got flames, and got fire trucks. It was the Arizona Department of Correction, so it was a wild horse inmate program, and smoke billowing up, horses scattering, and so I'm at this. We had about 80 horses per pen. And so near one of the front pens, and here comes a horse walking through the smoke decisively, not anxious, just decisively walking through the smoke, found where there was an area that was burning and dropped and rolled in that area that was burning. Never saw anything like that in my life. And so when the horse got up, it's better now, but obviously it's been how many years? 7 years.
Yeah, 8 years. Yeah.
So, but this area here was just all burned, still smoking, still smoldering. The area up in here where the horse had laid down, all in here where the horse was had been burned. Well, I jumped over the fence and ran up and got the horse up and ran him back. And so we took him up and got him up into the area where we could treat him. And so we started treating him, and I just really thought, this is just an amazing horse. And I told the guys that I'd really like to bring that horse over into training. But Tammy beat me to it. So you want to come and share kind of what this horse is doing today? This is Joey and Tammy. So.
Hi there, good morning. Smoky Pony, his name is Smoky Pony. I saw him in the pens in Florence. They used to have something called Freedom Fridays, and so you'd go and you'd look at the horses and you'd be able to adopt right out of the pens. And he was sitting in the front pen, his other side was showing, and I was standing next to a lady and we were talking about how beautiful he was. And then he turned around, and this was red, and it looked like it was burning, and it was just, and her response was, "Oh, that poor horse is never going to get adopted. He is so flawed, and he looks so bad, and nobody's going to adopt him." And I looked at her and I said, "He's going to be my horse." I had never adopted a wild horse before. It was my very first time going to Florence. And I'll be very transparent. I really didn't know what I was doing, and it's almost like I felt like God was speaking through me. And so I had a girlfriend that always went and adopted on Fridays, and she went the next Friday and she adopted him. And she called me and told me, and I went to her house and I saw him, and it was, I don't know how to explain the feeling, but I knew he would be mine. And I went back a few weeks later and he was gone. And I asked her, I was like, "Oh my gosh, where is he at?" And she said, "Oh, I sold him." And I started crying. And she said, "What is wrong with you?" And I said, "I need him. He needs to be with me." And she was like, "I just sent him for 30 days to get him a little gentle." And so I was like, "Okay, when he comes back, he's mine. Do not give him, sell him. Do not. He needs to be with me." And so shortly after that, our journey started, and Smoky has only ever had 30 days of professional training, so all of his flaws are because of me, because I have been the one to train him. He now is an animal therapy horse. I will have a really hard day, and I will go out to his stall, and he will stand very quietly while I climb on him, and I will lay on him and just pray. And he's the biggest blessing I think I've ever had, and I know that it's God. God brought him to me, and God keeps him with me, and he has blessed so many children and adults too, but mostly children. So that's Smoky's story, and we'll be around after if anybody wants to come up and give him some love. I know that he would love it. So,
all right, and they'll come right back into here at the end. So, Joey, go ahead and come up and just talk a little bit about what you do. And this is just a great couple. I'm unbiased, but
thank you. Yeah, I'm Joey. I've been in teaching Celebrate Recovery for 5 years now. I used to be an alcoholic, but God's given me a new life and a new heart, so I don't proclaim that anymore. I could be one step from stupid, but I'm not, thank God. But I've been sober for 6 years, and I taught a lesson the other night called Turn. And it's about turning your life over to Jesus Christ first, because he's the only thing that can give you freedom from that. And then understanding, and that's where the rest of your life is, just understanding and growing closer with Christ in your relationship with him. And then repenting when you do sin, and turning to the Lord, because he'll always be there with open arms and not shake his fist or his finger at you. And then just experiencing that new life. And when I think of the freedom that God has given us with our animals, and recovery, and just any life hurt, habit, or hang up, and we all go through them. You know, it could be divorce, it could be depression, anxiety. There's a lot of that going on in the world today. It doesn't just have to be addiction. That's been my passion, and so I've been working on trying to reach out to people in the Western community to help the cowboys and cowgirls out there, to let them know it's okay not to be okay. And just like Smoky, he wasn't okay for some time, but the blessing he's given to other people and the story he has that Randy will share has been a blessing to us, and we just want to pass that on and give back. So thank you.
all right, thank you guys. We'll see you in a little while. Greg Sportsman is running the sound, so if there's any problems at all, it's his fault. I just like to include you, no problem. And Corinne Teeple, can you bring in Starbuck? So Ross is not able to be here today, is that right? Where is he? He's just not feeling, so... hiding! So
He was parking, helping with the parking.
yeah, I know. I heard, somebody said he was out directing traffic. I don't know, Ross, if the sheriff of the county should be directing traffic, but we appreciate it.
Yeah, I learned at the academy.
Did you? That wasn't something, in the academy, we never thought, someday if I really play my cards right, I'll be able to direct traffic. It was, so thank you. And Ross, and I was going to say this anyway, but Ross, of course, is the sheriff of Pinal County, and doing an awesome job. So we greatly appreciate that. But sometimes when I'm talking to people who have met Ross and worked with them, especially during the election time, they said, isn't his wife amazing? And I'm serious. They really do say that she is just such a wonderful asset and such an encouraging person to be around. So I don't know if this is people unsolicited, just saying, have you met Corinne? She is awesome. So, and Corinne's the one that led the horse up, incidentally, so thank you. Been a part of Cowboy Church for since we started with, it was a different horse then, and once I started using Starbuck, he said, get rid of that old horse. He said, I'm better, didn't you? Starbuck and I were in Apache Junction yesterday, and so he got a pretty good workout. We were doing the Pony Express ride, and there we go. Doing the Pony Express ride there in Apache Junction, and we had police escort and going down the road. I can see everybody now. The problem is you can see me. That was a little bit better before. I could see the horse. So, where's Jeff and Mandy? Can you guys stand? You guys, thank you so much. You're just they're the owners of this, and did not hesitate to say, man, you guys can come out and use our place here. So it's interesting. When it was last Cowboy Church, Tammy came up and we were talking about Smoky, and I said, can you bring Smoky? And so she said, yes, absolutely. So I began thinking about that. I thought, you know what? I want to use that as kind of a backdrop and talk just about life. So many analogies there. So I want to talk about moving beyond the scars of life. And everybody, I've never met anybody that didn't have something that said, some injuries or scars or wounds personally or physically or emotionally. Horses have this amazing ability to move forward after things fall apart. I'm always amazed. Every horse has gone through trauma, and especially horses that come out of the wild. Starbuck was in the wild. Yes, you were. He was in the. He was shaking his head for another reason. He was in the wild for first couple of years of his life in Oregon, and that's one of the reasons these Mustangs typically, some horses do anyway, draft horses, but they really get a winter coat. Once the hours, the days start getting shorter, they'll start getting a winter coat, and so he's slowly losing that. But Smoky's a good example where you would think, and I appreciate Tammy saying that. People say, "Oh man, now that horse is not going to get adopted," or now nobody's going to want that horse. We had a donkey come in once, and these are right out of the wild. So we had horses and donkeys, burros. So this donkey comes in, and we were sorting them, and so I'm in the sorting pen. And I see this. I say, man, something's wrong with that donkey. It's got some scar or something right in the middle of like right above between the eyes. And so I get closer, and we get it in the squeeze chute. And somebody, I just hate it when people do. The thought of anybody doing it, but somebody had shot the donkey in the head, went into the nasal cavity, and so there was a hole there. And the donkey could breathe through that hole. I thought, this donkey, we're getting this over into the training area and find a good home for this donkey. He has already gone through a tough time, and but just I'm amazed. And this donkey came around and just very, very friendly. What happens sometimes when there's this the personal or whatever scars you want to talk about is. People will either become victims or they'll have a experience that helps them along. Too many times we choose victim. But if we say, you know, this is a reality, I can't change what happened, but I certainly can change how I'm going to respond to it. So I want to relate a little bit. Genesis 37, there's this guy named Joseph. Joseph's born, his dad really likes Joseph. He is not just he's the favorite. Gets his coat of many colors. His brothers don't like him. They're out in the fields working, and so he dreams this dream. So they're at, but let's assume breakfast, and he goes, "Hey, I had this weird dream. We're all out harvesting wheat, and we're binding the sheaves up, and just a weird thing. All your sheaves fell down and worship mine." Well, they don't, that. And then he has another one later. They already have an attitude. Said, I had another dream. Oh boy, here goes. The sun, the moon, and the 11 stars all fell down to worship me. I thought, okay, Joseph, quit sharing your story. So he's coming. His father sends him. He said his brothers are working. His father sends him to bring them food. They said, "Here comes that dreamer." And one of his brothers says this, "Let's kill him." That's how serious it was. And so the other one said, "No, let's throw him into this empty well." And so what happens through the process of time, he gets sold to Ishmaelites traders and goes into Egypt. So in a relatively short period, they figure he's about 17 years old at this point. In a relatively short period of time, here he is at the bottom of a well thinking, my dream was that I was in charge of something. It's not working out. Ishmaelite traders come along, and one of them says, we can at least make some money off of him rather than kill him. And so he's sold, goes into Egypt, he's put on the auction block, he's purchased, so he's been betrayed, he's sold, he's abandoned, he's becomes a slave, and then he's falsely accused. He goes to prison. While he's in prison, and he goes in prison because of the false accusations. While he's in prison, there's a butler and a baker that are also thrown into prison by the Pharaoh, and so they are talking one morning. The one says, I had this weird dream, and Joseph says this. He said, can you share that with me? He said, I know some things about dreams. I remember reading that. I would think, if anything, he would say, man, don't ask me. I am the worst at interpreting dreams, okay? He said, I know some things about dreams. My point is, he never gave up on the fact that whether he understood it or not, he definitely had a gift or something that he didn't understand. So the one shares the dream with him, and the dream, he said, you're going to be restored to your position and as the butler. And the others listening goes, that was a pretty good interpretation there. So he said, let me share with you mine. And he shares with him his, and he goes, well, bad news is you're going to be killed in 3 days and hung. So, but both of those things happen. And so over a period of time, Joseph then, because of that, becomes a leader in the nation. Overcoming the scars of the past is not instantaneous. I don't think you can have somebody, you can come up and say, I'd like somebody to lay hands on me so that I can overcome all my stuff in the past. But I do believe you can come to God and say, God, I would really like people to pray for me that I can get beyond the things that happened, and you do the things in me that you desire to do. So wherever he was, Joseph chose his gifts. So why do horses have this amazing ability to move forward when life falls apart? One is horses live in the moment. Horses would, for instance, with Tammy, and the horse went to Jeff Cook. Jeff's a friend of mine for training down in Tucson. But this experience. So this person is doing this. This person feeds me. This person, I'm bonding. So they don't say, people. I don't like people. Or I've had this pain, you know what, I'm worthless. And people would do this more than horses, because horses live in the moment. People will have scars, and I'm talking not just about physical scars, but scars in general. People will have scars and say, because of that, it places a value on me, and what happens is you place a value on yourself. But because of that, I am now less valuable than I was before. we get stuck in the past. So the first thing is start living in the today. No matter what, I can't change yesterday. I don't know about tomorrow, but I do know about today. Worry about the future, you'll miss what God has for you today in the moment. What we do as people that horses don't do is we create a story to make sense of what happened. And most often our story is flawed. Not what happened, but our story becomes flawed in some sense. We take either a lot of blame, we did it, or we become a victim rather than saying, I don't know. Because in reality, it doesn't matter. It didn't matter to Smoky why the scar was there. The reality was the scar was there. And you can't change that. But so what Joey and Tammy can do is they can say, you know, this horse has this amazing ability to connect with people and become a great therapy horse. And so the scar becomes an open door to a purpose that the horse could have never imagined. What happens in our story is we're the main character. And sometimes it's not all about you. I know that shocks you. Every once in a while, Libby will say something just radically crazy, like, honey, it's not all about you. I go, what in the world are you talking about? We're the main character in our story. We're the hero or the victim. We're worthless or deserving. So if we can kind of table our story for a while and say, here's the reality that I live in. Forget what you can't do and focus on what you can do. You can't change tomorrow. You can prepare yourself for it. You can't change tomorrow. You certainly can't change yesterday. Look for opportunities to see things that you can change. The bottom line is, this horse had it. Turn over the reins of your life to the one who is in the seat and who has the plan and the purpose and the blueprint. Once a horse starts doing that, not just, I don't want this horse to believe in me. The horse believed in me the day the horse saw me. I want the horse to believe me. I have to become believable. Sometimes we think, well, I believe in God. There's a scripture that says the devils also believe, but they tremble. So God, do I believe you? And that's when we start turning over the reins, and we become then not the focus of the story. The story is God's story, and we become part of a greater story than we could ever imagine. This horse has done things that he could have never imagined. He probably could travel 25 miles an hour. Really, you know, you've given a good run on the open range. This horse could write back to the herd and say, yesterday I was doing 70 miles an hour on the freeway. Never could have dreamed that. Speed limit was 65. I don't know what was going on, but I know I was doing 70. So look for opportunities to see things differently. Never, ever, 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 ever give up. And so you say, well, my scars are my fault. So what? It really doesn't matter. Well, I did this or I did that. You don't really understand. I deserved what I got. It really doesn't matter. Matter of fact, if it was your fault, God would rather hear you say, I'm sorry 1,000 times to I quit once. So we simply say, I'm not going to give up. I did this or this happened to me, so this horse has made mistakes. I've made mistakes. And so we say, okay, that's now we still hit tomorrow or the next hour or the next day. Joseph, 23 years later, he's then a father. He has a son. You can't tell me that his scars didn't bother him, because he's this leader. He's a husband, father. He understood forgiveness. He knew that God could do some amazing things, and he has a son. He names him Manasseh, and that translates to God has made me forget all that happened in my past. God has made me forget. In other words, God has replaced that with this other passion, this other purpose. We're not like horses. We remember yesterday real clearly. We live in today, but we live for tomorrow, and that's okay. We need to have a plan, but we can't get in anxiety and make all of our choices today because this may or may not work tomorrow. Horses never seem to get stuck in the past. They remember. They have great memories, but they have an amazing ability to move forward in spite of their memories. Horses, I had a horse that I trained and ended up giving it to some friends of mine because their daughter fell in love with the horse, and long story. But I borrowed the horse about a year and a half later, and I had the horse doing, it's called haunches in. Anyway, it's where the nose is this way and the rear is this way, so they're kind of bent at the rib cage, and they're moving in that direction. And you can do that for departure leads and different things you're training them to do. So year and a half, probably a little over a year and a half, maybe 2, I borrowed the horse. So I thought, I wonder if he still remembers that. I cued him, pulled the nose in, boom, moved into haunches in, departure lead. And I thought, that's really pretty cool. He didn't say, I have no idea what you're asking. That was a year and a half ago. They have great memories. So horses that have gone through abuse, they say, I don't know what happened, but somehow people have changed. Now, severe abuse, I'm not saying there are certain traumatic things that horses will really struggle with overcoming, so don't misunderstand me. But I look at the old way that I learned to train. The old way that the model then was have a snubbing post and you blanketed a horse out, and these weren't abusive people. That was the method. That was the only way they knew to train horses. But horses go through a lot of trauma. Now, if a horse is severely abused, it can take a long time depending on the horse. One of the things I like about Smoky, he just has kind eyes. It's one of the first things I look at with a horse, the soft, kind eyes. So that they can experience trauma and go, okay, I experienced trauma, but today's another day. So we can too easily get lost and get our lives stuck in the past. Joseph, for some reason, didn't do that. So I mentioned Manasseh. God has made me forget all my trouble and all my father's household. Sometimes we need to forget the past and move into the future. I'm not talking about forgetting in the sense of I have no memory of it, but forgetting in the sense of that is not going to control me. That is not what's in my mind as far as moving forward. So the second thing is, let God interpret your scars. There's a novel idea. Let God interpret your scars. The Bible says that He is drawn to the brokenhearted and those that are bruised. Isn't that amazing? He said, hey, I'm really drawn to the real successful guy that's got his act together. I'm drawn to the brokenhearted and those that were abused. You look at the people God chose, and you think, I don't know, if I was the CEO of a company, I would choose them. T.D. Jakes said, when you hold on to your history, you do it at the expense of your destiny. I wish I came across that. That's just a pretty good saying. When you hold on to your history, you do it at the expense of your destiny. So let God interpret your scars. The fact that Smoky chose to do something different than all the other horses and moved through the smoke into the fire and laid down and dropped on fire. I didn't know why, but I thought there's something different about this horse. So I wasn't saying this stupid horse. I was saying that there's something decisive going on, and a choice that was made. It wasn't random. It was a specific spot, and it was painful, and rolled out until when I read up, he was still rolling, and had to be painful. Your scars sometimes will open the door for a purpose that you never dreamed of. Not that God caused the scars for that purpose, but God gets in the middle of the pain, in the middle of the scars, and says, don't you ever give up on yourself. It's not plan B, it's another plan A. And God will get in the middle of the brokenness and bring about His purpose and His plan, because the scars and the brokenness and the pain are not bigger than His grace and His power and His ability. God will use your mistakes, and He'll use your successes. He will use the failures. It's amazing what God can use. Matter of fact, the Bible says we're more than conquerors. That, to me, that means the thing that maybe was intent on conquering you, you're more than just conquering that, but that thing becomes a catapult to your success or next chapter. Your scars may qualify you for things you never dreamed of. You never go into an AA meeting and somebody stands up and says, well, I've never had a drink in my life, but I want to tell you guys how to get your lives together. They're probably not going to listen. The guy that gets up and says, you know, I lost everything. I still struggle some. But I want you guys to know that here's what I did to overcome that. When I realized that I needed a higher power, and I found out that Jesus heals and forgives and redeems, and I need to surrender my life to Him, that was a turning point, and now my life is better than anything I could have ever dreamed. The guys say, I can relate to that guy. I used to jokingly tell, there's Chris Mayorana. Chris, you can wave your hand. I don't want anybody to know that you were formerly an inmate. I used to occasionally tell the guys things like, I say, you know, I've never made a mistake or sinned in my life, but I read a book about people who did, so that I can relate to you guys. And you get these blank looks, and then I would say, no, trust me, we've all messed up. And the Bible says there's not one person any better than anybody else. I said, I tell you what I'm going to do. As soon as I reach perfection, I'll start judging you guys. Until that point, we'll all try to work through this together. But that's reality. We all have our scars, but sometimes your pain or your scars will promote you. That was a number of years back. I was pastoring, but I was the senior chaplain for Scottsdale Police Department at that point. And it was a connection I had years back with Arlington, a friend of mine. We started as rookies together. He became the chief at Scottsdale. And so I'd been the chaplain there for a number of years, and I get a call one night, and it wasn't a Scottsdale officer, it was a Phoenix PD officer, and I think it was back when they had the Crown Vic issues, but Jason Schechterly, Jason was in a horrible accident, and so they called me and said, would you go to the hospital? It was his family members that called. So I get to the hospital, I had to put on gowns. I mean, he was burned severely. And so I went in, and of course he's sedated, and I prayed with him. And then the next time I was there, one of the Phoenix PD officers, a female officer, was there. She was just checking on him, and she said, it's interesting, we were talking, she said, I came up right after the accident. It was just a blur of like, okay, who's in the hospital? They weren't sure who was, there were other people transported, so the lieutenant said, go up and check and see if the guy that's in severe condition is Jason. She said, I went in, they allowed me to go in, I looked at him, and I went back, said, no, trust me, it's not Jason. He was so badly burned, she could not even recognize a guy that she worked with every day. And they really didn't expect him to live. He made it through. If you look it up, he speaks. He's written books. He's just a great speaker, really encourages a lot of guys. Now, I am not even for a moment saying that God caused this car to hit the back of his patrol car, burst into flames, so he catches on fire so that he could have this speaking thing. What I am saying is, because all that happened, it wasn't like, okay, you're done, you're finished, your life is over. But let's look at what open doors that pain and those scars produce. And I think sometimes we forget that it's say, God, I don't know why, or I can't explain this, but what I do know is that you're not through with me. That's what I do know. And let God interpret your your scars. God sees your scars and your pain much differently than you do, and much differently than people around you do. Sometimes your past and your scars qualify you. Some are visible, some aren't. The most devastating scars sometimes are the scars that aren't visible to anybody, just you. You beat yourself up, or you have this thing that just reoccurring, you think, man, I can't get past this. I've worked for years with veterans and first responders with PTSD, and a lot of times, with PTSD, the majority of the time you're dealing with invisible scars. I did a funeral down in Nogales for one of the veterans, and one of the most moving parts of that, the place was packed, and the veterans, wounded warriors, and some guys coming in with scars and with artificial limbs, and some of the most upbeat guys that you would ever meet. Very positive. Came to support the brother that died. Refuse to let the past define you. Ask God to help you catch a glimpse of what He sees when He sees your scars. Say, well, I deal with this all the time, or people remind me of it. Forget about people. God, what do you see when you see that? Help me catch a glimpse of what you see when you see my scars. If it's my failures, he sees that forgiveness and the blood of Christ is more powerful than your mistakes. If it's what somebody else did, he sees that his power is bigger than what somebody else did. And he can get in the middle of that and bring about some things that you can never imagine. So the third thing is let God rewrite your story. Let God start rewriting your story. Joey and Tammy rewrote a story. They really did. He just let them help rewrite the story. And so now his life is vastly different than anything that he could have imagined, if horses actually imagined. I wonder what it's going to be. I don't think they do that. What we do is let me talk about stories for a minute, because what we do is we develop a story to put life in perspective and make sense of everything. And our story usually gets in the way of moving forward. Your story is like your history, but it's enhanced. Your history tells you what happened. What your story does is it guesses at the why. And that's where we get in trouble. There are certain parts of the why you may know, but it fills in the blanks on why. In law enforcement, we had a okay. Not going to go there. I'm glad I can edit these videos. Okay. Thank you. So what happens is sometimes we will look back at a situation, and we'll think, I should have, if I could have done this, I should have done this. Wasn't I able to do this? And what got me thinking was, so my partner got shot at my patrol car at the door. And I was going to be in that, standing right there within a few moments. And that's really where I started, just in kind of a natural sense, working with PTSD. And so that was why with Scottsdale that I ended up doing that. That was out in Arlington, in Texas. What we do sometimes is that starts defining us, and we get this story that we put in place, and the shooter we had back then, it was we had our it was at the department. He came into our parking lot at shift change, and so there's a big mirrored glass, and I knew, so that was where our computer, all the computer workers, it was part of dispatch, and so when we would call to run a check or whatever, they would have all the computer people back there. That was the window. They were all back there. That's where he lined up. So you couldn't get a shot. It was just a mess. And by then, Doug had taken 2 shots, and he was bleeding out. And it just is this hopeless, helpless feeling. But my point is that was something I really had to work through. Because you can't, but yet you, what if, and why him, and why not me, and it's a ridiculous road to go down, but in some sense we all kind of do that. So that certainly wasn't in my notes. Okay. I forget what I was talking about at some point. I didn't get tearful, but I started going down this rabbit trail and told a friend of mine later, I said, man, if I start doing that again, throw a rock at me or something. Romans 8:28 says, we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are called according to his purpose. That's a pretty cool scripture. We know that all things work together for good. Not that he caused all things, but all things work together for good. Kind of weaves through it. And he says, to them who are called according to his purpose. So what do you need to do? Say, God, I'm called according to your purpose. All things are going to work together for good. You're going to somehow work this thing around. It's all going to work together for good. And at some point, I may not ever see it or understand it, but at some point, I'm going to be able to at least see the purpose behind it, that your purpose never changed in my life. So turn over the reins of your life to God. That's where it starts. Say, I'm going to just surrender the reins. And I mentioned this before, what this horse does. So yesterday we were in an event in Apache Junction, and it was the Pony Express reenactment. So we're doing each segment. So we've got the mailbag, and we're going down Apache Trail. We had police escorts and all that for safety. But he's staying right with it, and we get to the next one. We hand off to the next guy who happened to be a former inmate that was riding the next leg, which is really pretty cool. And I've got tremendous, and I'm serious when I say this, I've got tremendous adopted kids. I really do. And Chris and Rochelle are a couple of them. And it's not like we go, oh, they're kind of adopted. We go, no, they're the kids. When I'm older and I need somebody to move in with, that's where I'm going. So that was yesterday. We had a workout, and then we had a ride down with the whole group, and it was windy, and then today we can get here, and he will stand here until I ask him to do something. This is your first time in Cowboy Church? I forgot to even ask. So you never seen him do tricks or anything, have you? I didn't bring any platform. So watch this. This is a spin. For those of you in the reining world, this is a spin. Okay, so one more time, just to impress everybody. So if you're filming this and you put that on high speed, it'll really let. Good. He spins the other way too. He's a ambidextrous spinner. Now he will side pass. He will just go, okay, I can go over this way. Put my leg over here. He'll go over this way. But what he does is he will just stand here waiting for me to tell him what to do. I wish I was that way with God. I promise you. I don't know, God, is that you? I don't know, I'm not sure. Well, should I do this? Well, what if I get my story involved in there? He just goes, okay, I have no idea why I'm going that way. This is kind of stupid. Don't know why I turned around. I'm facing the same way I started. We could have avoided all that and not done it. But he doesn't overthink it. He just goes, okay, you're asking me to do that. I wish I was that way with God. My point is that we all have a past. We all have our scars and things we don't understand, we wish hadn't happened. But the reality is we just say, God, help me to catch a glimpse of what you see. When you see that situation, God, I know that was stupid of me to do, or I know that was wrong, or I know that was wrong of other people, and I end up getting hurt, or I have no idea why, but the bottom fell out, and it seems like I'm the one that suffered the pain of that, and say, God, would you help me get a glimpse of maybe not just what you see of what happened, but what you see of me and what I am purposed, destined, qualified to do. And perhaps that thing qualified you for things that you never dreamed of. Perhaps that thing qualified you to move into an area that you never thought of. So I appreciate you guys bringing Smoky. I've been ever since you talked to me, I thought we've never done a message like this, but I think that's so significant, and to see Smoky up here and to be a therapy horse, and you guys will be able to pet him, and all of you can ride him today. All right. See. That preacher ended with a lie. I don't know if that's good or not. Let's pray, and sometimes and I didn't mention this, but sometimes the scars are things that happened in family and brokenness and kids and life, and it just breaks you to the core. Say, God, would you get in the middle of that? So, God, I pray for every person here. God, I pray for those who have not really came to that point of saying, God, I just surrender the reins of my life to you. God, I believe that Jesus died for my sins. I confess with my mouth that Jesus is Lord. And God, I ask you to forgive me and get in the middle of everything within my life. And God, help me to catch a glimpse of what you see when you see the totality of my life, the past, the present, and God, you hold the future. So, Lord, I pray that you would lead every one of us to the future with hope, the future that you have for us. And God, we thank you for it in Jesus' name.